from the Ministry of Education, colleagues from the local governments and other MDAs for government. I'm also happy to recognize our biggest partners, the children, and also other partners in the development world. Ladies and gentlemen, the children that we are having here, I think some of you could have been expecting the toddlers, but since these ones have just left that stage, they are able to represent that constituency very well. We are not able to get the pre-primary education children here for this particular event, but at least some of you are parents and many of you are actors in that field. So I believe you are also here standing for them and effectively representing them. Allow me on behalf of ISER welcome you to this very important event where we shall be launching that report on lay a strong foundation for all children. Allow me also on behalf of ISER and join me to thank the partners with whom we've worked on this report, most particularly Human Rights Watch. We are very, very grateful for the support, for the collaboration, and more so noting that since immediately after COVID, we've been working very, very closely, and I would say this is the second report that we are jointly authoring. We thank you very much and look forward to continued collaboration. Of course, we also recognize the partnership and collaboration of other constituencies, especially in government. We thank you very much, the Ministry of Education, because without your support, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to undertake such a research study that we are going, whose report we are going to launch today. We thank you very much for the support. We thank you very much for the assistance and for the guidance that you have given us. We of course also thank the local governments with whom we have been working on this report. And we also thank the parents, the teachers, and also the students that participated very, very vigilantly as we were developing this report after undertaking the research. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all aware that early childhood education and care is something that is not new. It is something that is as old as society itself. You know very well, much as we are now having a formal system for early childhood care and education, this is something that we have been having for a long time, especially if we are to look back at the African setting. We were having these fireplace kind of interactions with the elders, and we are having a setting where the children would particularly be taken through various rituals, including education system, however informal it was. And all this has always been done, and we continue doing it because we know very well how important early childhood is in the formative stage of the human race. So when we talk about early childhood education and care in a more advanced setting like we are having now, the education system, it means that we are just building on what has been there already and something that we needed to formalize since we are now we have now moved into a different kind of world order and setting. Education before used to be done at the family level, at the community level, and maybe up to the tribal level and so on. But as we go on, as we move forward, we now realize that we must have education done also at a different level. This does not mean that we are no longer having this kind of education being undertaken at the primary, at the family level, because we know as parents we've got a very big role to play. So I don't want to preempt or to tell you whatever the findings are, and I cannot give highlights on the findings, since on the program we've got dedicated people who are supposed to come and do that. But allow me make a few comments which I believe are general comments. We are very well aware that there are so many inhibiting factors when it comes to access to quality education, especially for early childhood care and education, that brings us here today. For this particular research, we have focused on fees, which other people would simply call tuition, but we know very well that tuition is just one of the fees, but there are several other fees. And we've used this word fees, but of course you can also look at it from the broader perspective of costs, because apart from the fees, we've got some other elements of the costs, like feeding, like transportation, but we shall focus on fees, since this was what the research was focusing on. Allow me say that most of us in this room, I don't know how many have had that chance of going through a formal early childhood education, I mean in a school setting. But I wouldn't be surprised if some of us in this room have not had the chance. And there are several reasons as to why maybe not all of us, or not all eligible people, have gone through that system. One of them is fees. But of course there are other reasons. Other reasons being attitude. Some people feel that early childhood education is a waste of time. Some people have lived in under circumstances or in locations where early childhood education cannot be easily accessed. Others have had parents or guardians who feel that maybe my child can just go directly to P1 and start his or her education from there without necessarily going through early childhood education. So there are various reasons. And when you look at them critically, at times the issue of fees and costs is very paramount. We of course take cognizance of the fact that pre-primary education or childhood education, early childhood education, is by very, very far, being delivered by the private sector. And of course, it is something that calls for a lot of investment. And for them to plow back their investment costs, they have to shift the burden to the parent. And of course, some parents, apart from not having the money, may not have that desire of saying that we prioritize early child education, other than having someone to go and enroll directly in UPE. So I think as the report comes out, we shall have very interesting findings, against which findings we shall be making various recommendations. As I conclude my remarks, allow me call upon participants to be open-minded. Just like another research, there could be gaps here and there, And of course, this research, whose report is being launched today, I would say it's not the first research. And I believe it's also not the last research to be done in that respect. So please let us have as many contributions as possible, well knowing that we are also contributing to that journey. That is, and it's part of our mandate as part of the civil society organizations. We are just making a contribution. And very, very lastly, allow me thank the government of the Republic of Uganda for creating that very conducive environment that allows for the participation of other players in this field of early childhood care and education. And it is on that basis, and also following the footpath of the policy, that we have been able to come up with this research, and also we are able to sit here and deliberate. It's not a no-go area, and I believe we can very effectively and freely debate and come up with the recommendations. It is good that you are here, our colleagues from the Ministry of Education, representing government, and we believe we shall continue to engage and see how best we can improve on early childhood education. Very, very lastly, allow me say that the approaches or the recommendations that might come up are very likely to bring out the fact that as we address this sector of education, it is something that will request a multifaceted approach, something that will cannot be solved in one go, something that may need unique approaches under different circumstances, and also different localities. You may find that the way it is approached in Karamoja, a nomadic, semi-nomadic kind of community, may not be the same like in Kampala or some other locations that are hard to reach. So it is also something that may need one size fits all may not be one of the best approaches, and I know government is very aware of this, but also it is something that will continuously require the participation of different players. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me end my opening remarks here by once more thanking you very much for having honored our invitation to be part of this very historic event. Good morning, and we wish you very good, fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Nyende. And at this point, I would like to say that I hope we've all picked a thing or two from what he said in just setting the tone of why we're here and why this conversation is important. But there's something also interesting that he did mention, and he did not try to get a snapshot from the room when he asked how many of us have actually attended preschool. Just by a show of hands, how many of us attended preschool? Yes, you can clearly see. You can clearly see. I just wanted to get that picture. But now moving on to the next, we're going to have one of the other partners on this research from Human Rights Watch. Invite with me Joe Becker, who is the Children's Rights Advocacy Director at Human Rights Watch. Let's have Joe Becker come up with a warm welcome.
Good morning. It's such a privilege to be here in Kampala and to speak to you today on behalf of Human Rights Watch. And I want to thank each of you for participating today, especially our guests from the Ministry of Education and Sports, from UNICEF, from our development partners, and from civil society and the children who are joining us today. For the past 2 years, Human Rights Watch has been privileged to work alongside ISER to produce the report that we're launching today on access to pre-primary education in Uganda. Pre-primary education, or nursery, has profound and lifelong benefits for children, and it's also one of the best investments that societies can make. It has the power to transform lives, to lift individuals out of poverty, to foster social and economic development. It boosts children's educational attainment, their health, their employment prospects, and their income as adults. Brain development is at its highest in the early childhood years, so this is a critical time to make a difference. However, here in Uganda, the majority of children miss out on this critical early learning. Uganda has been a leader in providing universal primary education and universal secondary education, yet the government does not provide free pre-primary education, and the majority of families cannot afford the fees charged by private providers. Some pre-primary schools here in Kampala charge more in fees than the tuition for an engineering degree at Makerere University. On Friday, I met a woman in Mukono district. She's a single mother with 8 children, and she really wanted her children to access pre-primary, but her income selling charcoal barely provided enough money to feed her family. Some of her children received bursaries, but even so, she went 1 million shillings in debt just to pay the school fees. With her meager income, she has no idea if she'll ever be able to repay that money. As you'll hear later this morning, our research found that the lack of government-provided pre-primary education in Uganda has a range of negative impacts. Children miss out entirely, or their education is interrupted when their parents are no longer able to afford the fees. Without nursery, children perform worse in primary school and are twice as likely to repeat primary 1. Because pre-primary is so expensive, many parents enroll their children early, at age 5 or even 4, when they're unprepared, creating overcrowded classrooms and overwhelmed teachers. Children in rural and poor areas stand to benefit the most from nursery, and yet they're least likely to attend, creating ever-widening inequalities in society. But today you'll also hear about the significant social and economic benefits of pre-primary and how government-funded pre-primary can benefit not just the children of Uganda, but the entire country. The government of Uganda has recognized pre-primary as a critical foundation of learning. In 2016, President Museveni called for the establishment of an early childhood development unit at every UPE school. So just as Uganda has been a leader in UPE and USE, we hope that it can also lead on the establishment of free and universal nursery for all children. And I very much look forward to our conversation today about how we can make that a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe, for that sneak peek again into what is yet to come. And at this point, I'll quickly invite the next speaker. And the next speaker is Dr. Safieldin Munir, who is from UNICEF and is the UNICEF Country Director. Dr. Munir.
The Haji Ismail Mulindwa, the Director of Basic and Secondary Education at the Ministry of Education, the Chair of the Board of ISER, Dr. Juma Nwindi, and the Executive Director of ISER, Ms. Angela Naboui, the Director of Children's Rights Advocacy at Human Rights Watch, Ms. Jo Baker, the Assistant Commissioner for Primary Education, senior government officials present, our lovely children who are also here, representatives of the civil society organizations, representatives of development partners, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. It's really a great honor and pleasure for me to stand before you and to be able to participate in the launch of one other very important report that is about ECD. The report, as you know, is about lay a strong foundation for all children, and it specifically addresses the issue of the fees, school or nursery fees, as a discriminatory barrier to ECD or ECCE, that is early childhood care and education. And I think the earlier speakers already highlighted the importance of nursery or pre-primary education, so I don't want to repeat that. But I want just to share with you some very basic facts, that if we look at the Convention on the Rights of the Child, we will see that access to quality pre-primary education is a child right. And we also look at the fact that there are extremely important benefits at the individual level of the child and at the society level when we talk about early childhood education. Let me share with you a few of the scientifically proven benefits of the nursery education globally. Nursery education globally has proven to contribute significantly to cognitive development for children, which means enhancing intellectual growth and problem-solving skills for children in the age group between 3 and 5. It also enhances social and emotional development, which means fostering emotional intelligence, social skills, and resilience. It also enhances linguistic development, which means boosting language acquisition and communication skills. It also enhances motor development, which means it improves coordination and physical abilities for children. Moreover, it enhances physical and health development, meaning that it promotes overall health and the well-being of these children. Now, these are benefits at the level of an individual child who is able to access quality pre-primary education. These individual benefits translate into social and economic benefits to the nation, and let me highlight a few of them. Children who have benefited from nursery or pre-primary education have benefited from the opportunity for improved learning outcomes. The learning outcomes for children who went through pre-primary education have always been higher compared to those who didn't benefit from this. Also, the society will benefit from increased years of schooling and low rates of dropout, low rates of repetition. Pre-primary education also gives women, working women, the opportunity to participate in labor force. Imagine a mother who is unable to find the kind of care, the kind of safe place to leave her child. She definitely wouldn't be able to participate in economic activities. So these are some of the benefits for the society from nursery or pre-primary education. A recent study also conducted by UNICEF and the Ministry of Education and Sports has shown that every one shilling you invest in pre-primary education yields 16.3 shillings as benefits to the country. Every 1 shilling yields a benefit equivalent to 16.3 shillings. So economically, pre-primary education is the best investment to go for. I would like to repeat actually the words and probably the dream we all share. Mrs. Joe Baker already said, Uganda has been a pioneer for universal primary education, also a pioneer for universal secondary education, and our hope that Uganda will become the pioneer for universal pre-primary education, which is free, of high quality, and accessible for every child everywhere in Uganda. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Doctor, for those brief remarks and leaving us with that challenge. How we would love to see a Uganda that is indeed pioneering universal pre-primary education and free at that. Now, at this point, we're going to get right into the last speech from the opening remarks, one that will be delivered by Haji Ismail Mulindwa. Haji Ismail Mulindwa is the Director of Basic and Secondary Education at the Ministry of Education and Sports. Let's welcome him as he gives us his remarks.
Thank you very much. Members, I want to request to stand on the protocol, the existing protocol for now. I will have another opportunity to pass through the protocol. Ladies and gentlemen, before I make any remark here, I need maybe to register the Minister's apologies for not being with you here today. It's the reason, one reason why we even started this meeting a little late, because she was contemplating, she was really committed to be here with you, but finally she couldn't make it. And I was called upon to stand in her shoes because she was assigned yet another, she received a call which I had to respond to positively. So that's the reason why we delayed to start this meeting. I was waiting to come with her, but she couldn't make it. Her apologies. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here now in two capacities: as Director of Basic and Secondary Education and as a minister at a later time. I've been guided that I make some few remarks as a director. Then when it comes to that time when the minister's message is supposed to be relayed, I'll again come back to relay the minister's message. So I request you to be patient, because my remarks may not be that important compared to the minister's remarks. We need really to pick a few lessons from minister's remarks. So I request you to be patient up to that time when the message is shared. As Director of Basic and Secondary Education, I want to take this opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome you to this very, very important meeting. And why do I welcome you? Because what is being discussed here now is falling within my docket. So I take this opportunity to welcome you, and at the same time take the opportunity to thank in absentia the person who has just left. Dr. Munir is one of our big partners, if he's not the leading partner, as far as ECD is concerned. We have done quite a lot with UNICEF under his leadership, and he has contributed immensely to the development of ECD. So we appreciate him as a ministry. We also want to take this opportunity to appreciate ISER for this kind of discussion, because many things happen after heads have come together to see how we move forward. So you will not have ECD being part of government officially, if we don't have these discussions at this early stage, so that when we start moving, we move in a more coordinated manner. So we want to thank ISER for taking the lead on this, and I want to let you know that ISER is one other pattern we have worked with and has done quite a lot. And I believe this research is going to inform us, is going to paint a picture on how we are managing ECD. I want also to take this opportunity to thank our colleague who traveled all the way from, I think, USA, Madame Jo. We thank you for being in partnership with the ISER and the ministry that to see how we can really support ECD. It was a challenging question here when somebody said, raise your hands, those who benefited from ECD or nursery education. I didn't see quite many, and that shows you how important that this topic is. If you missed it, then our children shouldn't miss it. I want to thank you, Joe, for the partnership and making sure that we embrace ECD. At a later time, we shall get to know how the ministry is coming out, because many times we get conflicting kind of statements about the ministry, in ECD. We don't. That's the very reason why we are here. And when we share with you, we realize that the ministry is really taking lead on this and is very, very cognizant of the fact that ECD is form the foundational learning. Without ECD, we are likely to really have quite a number of challenges. Some facts will be shared and we'll get to realize that we need ECD and we need it yesterday. So I want also to thank my colleagues, the ministry officials who are here. You get to know them at a later time. And all of you, civil society, organizations, the kind of pressure you are putting, I think is time and really quite needed at this time. And all other stakeholders, the media, you have done quite a lot. Every time you open a page, you'll find some comments around ECD, pre-primary education. I want to urge you to keep informing the public about this and trying to support the ministry and finally coming up with a more comprehensive plan on early childhood education. With those few remarks, I beg to stop here. For now, as Director Basic and Secondary Education, note that when I come back, I will be a different person, maybe putting on a different coat as a minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Haji, and we shall take note when you come back dressed in a different cape. So what we're going to do at this moment, one of the things that we're keen about is that as we're having this conversation, would also very much like to have a brief chat with the people that are in that target group, and that is the children particularly. And at this point, we were able to have a couple of children that will be joining us just to talk to them and get to hear what their lived experiences have been like. If they've been to preschool or not, and what that has turned out to be for them. And now I'm going to have this conversation with Kevin here. Kevin was kind enough to join us, and Kevin will introduce himself as we have this brief chat. So Kevin, please stand up and just join me. You'll join me. And you can, Kevin, you can just take that seat over there. This one. Yes, so I'll just help Kevin set this up shortly, and then we shall start.
Good morning.
Yes, so Kevin does not. I don't want Kevin to feel like he's on a hot seat, so I'll join him so that we can have a conversation. So Kevin, you'll just briefly tell us your name and which class you're in and which school.
I greet you in the name of our Lord.
Amen.
My name is Sedun Kevin. I have 14 years old. I am in primary 5. I learn at Nsambwesiu Primary School. The school is located in Mukono district.
Okay. Yes.
Allow me to speak Luganda because it is the language I know better.
Hey, okay. Yes, that is fine. So Kevin will be speaking to us in Luganda. I hope we are all able to understand Luganda. So Kevin, ogambye essomero liri Mukono.
Yes.
Oli mu kyakuna. Kyakutaano. Kati tubadde twebuuza wagendako mu nasare? Tewasoma nasare?
Iye.
Watandikirawo P1?
Nsambu. Nsambu.
Yanche mugambale ngamba watandikirawo P1 straight tewagenda mu nasare?
Iye.
Kati gy'osomera waliyo banno abagendako mu nasare?
Waliyo batini abagendayo.
Batini?
Iye.
Abamu kubo mikwano gyo?
Iye, mikwano gyange.
Mikwano gyo. Kati we mubeera mu class mutuula mutya?
Lwe natuukayo mu primary, madamu nga yawula abatasoma nassale n'abagisoma.
Kati abaasoma nassale bo babeerawo? Babeera mu maaso, babeera mabega? Mutuula mutya?
Wabaawo zikolomu mu kiraasi.
Zikolomu?
Ez'entebe. Nga babatuuze eno, ffe batutuuze eri.
Okay. For those that are not getting what Kevin is saying, so I've asked him if he went to preschool, and he said he did not go to preschool. And then I also asked him if there are some of his friends, classmates, that actually went to preschool, and he says yes. Now, one of the interesting things he has mentioned is that the way they sit in class is that those that went to preschool sit in one column and those that did not sit on the other side. Kati Kevin, kyobadde ogamba ekyo kyaliwo okuva P1 okuva ddala P1 paka class gy'olimu nga bwe mutyo mutuula?
Era ne kati bakyatwawulamu.
Kati gwe muli owulira otya? Owulira otya oba tokiinaako buzibu ekyo?
Sikiinaako buzibu.
Tokiinaako buzibu? Gwe kasita oba ng'osomye kiba kimala. Kati waliyo ekirala kyoyagala okumbuulirako, engeri gye wasomamu oba okuba nga tewasoma nassale, ky'omuli owulira otya oba tokirowoozangako yadde?
Kye nalaba nga tosome nassale oba omiisinga leeta mu kigambo.
Omiisinga leeta?
Iye.
Katugambe nti okumiisinga leeta kyo kitegeeza ki? Spelling. Spelling. Nti spelling y'ebigambo by'Oluzungu togifuna bulungi ebiseera ebisinga. Kati banno bali olabanga enjawulo weeri nti banno bali bo tebamiisinga bigambo, bali abaasoma nassale.
Iye.
Kyolaba?
Naye abamu bamiisingamu.
Nabo era abamu bamiisingamu. Fees balya za bwereera abo. Naye yes, Kevin has said that I've already talked about the way that they are arranged in terms of sitting while they are in class, and that has happened right from his P1 to the current class is in. What has intention about knowing is then if he has noticed any challenges as one who had never been to preschool, and he says yes, and that is particularly because, and it could be something very simple, but again from his perspective I think you can get the idea that when it comes to, for example, spelling English words, he has challenges doing that, whilst his colleagues that have been to preschool might not. Of course, there are still some that still find difficulties in doing so, but he was just keen to say that that is one of the challenges. To him, there isn't much of a big deal. The fact that he missed out, it doesn't make him feel a certain kind of way, but at least we can see what the reality is, given that he did not attend preschool. Wali ekyacho oyagala otubuulirako Kevin ku experience yo mu ssomero gwe nga ataasoma nasale?
Nekyawe tuba tukola ebibuuzo nga tubimaze era sipafominga bulungi mu kiraasi.
Topafominga bulungi? Okay, kati osuubira nti singa wali wagenda mu nasale kyandibadde kyanjawulo? Kitegeeza abasinga opafominga boolaba bagendako mu nasale. Kati lindako wali nga tonnagenda mu nasale, walina emikwano egyali gigenda mu nasale ng'omanyi nti olaba banno bagenda okusoma naye nga gwe togenda? Wali obalaba ngero ozannya nabo?
Nali nzannya nabo.
Kati gwe maama wali tomubuuzangako bannange nga bagenda osoma ye yakugamba ki, oba temwakyogerako ekyo?
Nali mbeera wa jjajja nga talina ssente.
Wali obeera wa jjajja? Wali obeera ne jjajja? Kati ye jjajja yakugamba ki, oba temwakyogerako ekyo ng'olaba banno bagenda osoma, banno boozannya nabo?
Twakyogerako n'antwala ewa taata.
Yakutwala ewa taata? Taata naakugamba ki?
Taata ngalaba sijja mu bannasale n'antwala direct mu primary.
Ng'awo okuze? Ng'okuze. Nkitegedde. What he's saying is, at a certain point, because I was asking him, as he was growing up, even as we were kids, you'd be playing with the neighborhood friends and you would notice it's either something they have that you do not have, and some of these things as children would prompt you when you get back home to just want to know, why am I not like the other person? So what he says is that while he was growing up, he had these friends that were going to nursery and he wasn't. But unfortunately for him, at that point he was staying with his grandfather, and one, he did not have the money too, but also that at a point when this discussion came up, he took him to his father, and then his father told him that at that point he was much older, so he could not fit in nursery, so he was much older than the average age for nursery school, so that is why he was not able to join ultimately and just went directly to primary. So Kevin, webale nnyo okujja n'okutuwaamu kaakadde okuba nga tunyumyamuko, kutubuulira ku bye wayitamu, kulaba ngeri gy'osomyemu. Tuli basanyufu nnyo. Webale nnyo. Kale mumukubire ku ngalo bambi. Yes, at this point what will happen, and I hope that as the conversation continues, we shall be able to relate some of these experiences with the research findings or whatever it is that you'll be hearing as the discussion goes on, because the truth is that what Kevin has, for example, shared in a very short time is a sneak peek in what the reality is for children. And of course, given that he's a child, there might be things that he might not be able to exactly pronounce, some nuances on what certain things mean. He can only plainly tell you what his experience was, and that is it. So what is going to happen is we are going to delve into yet another segment of our program, and if you look at it, you'll see that this is the segment where we have a presentation on the research findings. And at this point, I'm going to invite Angela Nabwowe, who is the Executive Director at the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, who will be happily taking us through this segment. So invite with me the ED of ISER, Miss Angela Nabwowe. Yes, please invite with me.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Yes, the tea is available, but you're going to bear with us. So I get the energy levels being low at this time. So thank you very much for joining us today. I'm going to take us through the research findings. That is the title of the research lay a strong foundation for all children. And from the people who have been speaking before me, we do understand that indeed pre-primary nursery is a strong foundation for children. But also just to mention, we are going to be using certain words interchangeably. So sometimes we'll refer to pre-primary, other times you're going to refer to nursery, and then we are also going to refer to early child education and care. So those words are used interchangeably, and because this was research, you also want to portray the information as you've gotten it from someone. So some people, when we're talking to them, they will use the word nursery, others will say pre-primary, but also in reviewing a number of reports, doing that analysis, there is different language that was coming out, but we are all clear is that what we are talking about is the education that a child gets between the years of 3 to 5 before they proceed to primary 1. I just want to open with this quote that we got from a parent in Kampala who said that everything in this world has a foundation. Without a foundation, it is weak and it will collapse. It is important to have a foundation for education, and that is nursery. So that is a quote that we got from a parent in Kampala. So going forward, just to go through the research objectives, we wanted to document the positive benefits of pre-primary, looking at both the economic and social benefits, but also to highlight the financial barriers to children's access to pre-primary education, like you have been hearing. Then also to document those negative impacts that happen when children do not have access to pre-primary. And again, we have some recommendations to urge government to commit to expanding access to pre-primary education. This research has been done over a 2-year period, that is from 2022 to 2024. And our study sites were in Nakapiripirit in Karamoja district, or in Karamoja sub-region, then Omoro district in northern Uganda. We were in Mukono. I'm glad we have the inspector of schools from Mukono. We went to Namayingo district. Namayingo district is an eastern district, and part of it borders Kenya. It has part of it as an island. Then we also did some interviews from Kampala by default. 102 interviews were conducted, and then we interacted with children aged 8 to 17 years, and then we did also talk to teachers that are teaching primary school, but also those are teaching preschool, and then we also analyzed secondary resources from government documents. Okay, from government documents. And then we looked at reports from partners like the UNICEF. UNICEF, you've just heard from the country director. They just did a research study on the cost-benefit analysis of pre-primary education. We looked at reports from UNESCO, the World Bank, the IMF, which is the International Monetary Fund, NGO reports, but we also looked at. And broadly, where does pre-primary stand? When you look at Uganda's legal and policy framework, we look at our constitution, which is the supreme law, and education is provided for under Article 30 and Article 34. So Article 30 is that everyone has a right to education, but Article 34 is very specific around Education Act of 2008. Specifically, when you look at Section 10, it talks about the years that a child is supposed to spend, a person is supposed to spend in school. The 3 years of pre-primary, then we have the 7 years at primary, and then the other years. It is clearly elaborated, but specifically when you, International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights provides for the right to education, and goes in primary that states have a responsibility to provide primary education and secondary education, and then but uses the language when you go to those other levels of progressive realization. It doesn't specifically talk about pre-primary, but then when you come to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, that is the Child Convention, for it goes deeper. African states that have signed, including Uganda, that have ratified that. There's also been articulation of the right to education under Article 17, that everyone has a right to education. But also specifically, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights has come up to urge states parties to the African Charter to be able to provide pre-primary education, looking at it as a foundation for long life learning. And then also on the African continent, we also have the African Charter on the Rights of the Child. And that also articulates the right to education and also looks at the best interests of the child. We also, I thought that I should also mention that we have the African Union Agenda 2063 that African states that agreed to, and it calls for sustained investment based on universal early childhood development and basic education. That is the African Union Agenda 2063. But because pre-primary education is largely provided now by private actors, I thought that I should mention the Abidjan Principles. The Abidjan Principles on Human Rights Obligations of States are supposed to come in to guide states on what should happen when there is that private provision, basically to make sure that states do adequate regulation of private providers of education. So in looking at the benefits, and I'm glad that from what you heard from Kevin, we know that the benefits of pre-primary are enormous. And also, as we shall hear from other speakers, I will not go so much detail because I do not want to preempt the conversation, but just to give you some highlights of what we came across. And it is true that there are long-term benefits arising out of that in terms of educational attainment, health, and employment benefits, as we shall see later on. But we know that this, when pre-primary is provided, it can mitigate inequalities among children from families of different incomes. We've heard from that from my colleague Joe Baker from Human Rights Watch, from the country director of UNICEF. He has also been able to articulate that, and as we shall also see from other speakers. And of course, Dr. Mnil also mentioned about the research around the cost-benefit analysis, because I mentioned that in doing this research, we didn't just talk to people, but we're also able to do an analysis of existing literature. And there's this big research by UNICEF, which Dr. Mnil has referenced, that for every 1 shilling that is involved, you're able to get over 16 shillings. So the investment is good. We also know, from the people that we talked to, they said that also there is the issue of developing personalities, talents, physical abilities, and social skill. And I thought I would just bring you this quote from Richard Tirimba, from a primary school teacher in Nakapiripirit, who said that, 1, it helps the child to socialize with others. also makes the child learn how to read and write early, and the child gets used to the school environment before joining primary. Another pre-primary teacher said that pre-primary education stimulates the kids' thinking. But we also learned from the various interviews that pre-primary prepares children for long life learning, good performance in primary and afterwards. So, and when you go into the negatives we are dealing with at the moment, and I thought that I would use a number of quotes from the children and from the teachers and parents around this. One, children miss out on pre-primary education. We had this parent from Kampala who is a food vendor who said that my first child did not go to nursery school. I did not have money to pay school fees. If a free primary option had been available, if I did not have money to pay school fees, if a free primary option had been available, of course she would have considered this, that she would have taken her children to school. And the issue around interrupted education, during the interviews, several people said that actually at the beginning of term or beginning of the year, and you, majority of people here being Ugandans, is that when you have small children at home and they see others going to school, they'll cry and they want to go. And so parents let them go. But when the time comes for collecting the money and the teachers send them back home, many do not return because the parents were claiming that they did not have money. So we talked to a pre-primary teacher in Omoro district in northern Uganda, who said that pre-primary enrollment is low in this area. When the school sends a pupil back home for fees, the parents just leave them to stay at home and they never return. Crop failures affects parents' inability to pay fees. And I thought I should just say more about this. So in interactions, in our field interactions in Omoro district, so the inspector of schools mentioned that since 2022, that area has been hit by drought, and so people's crops have been failing. And in that area, there are a number of people, there are centers that have been established, and there is a way they do the school fees. So in one school, they told us that the tuition is 50,000 shillings. But on top of the 50,000 shillings, a child has to bring 10 kilograms of beans, and then you also bring maize flour. So you pay the 50,000 cash, and then you're supposed to bring these items. And because they are farmers, so there are seasons when they are able to bring those things. But because of the drought and crop failures, so they have not been able to raise that. So that happened. So when that happens, they drop out and they are not able to be able to take their children because they are not able to meet the requirements. So, but also we noted poor performance in primary school and onwards. We talked to a boy aged 10 in Kampala who said, when I entered primary school, I struggled with reading, writing, and speaking English. Things were difficult for me. I was not understanding. But we have also noticed a lot of premature primary enrollment. And because parents do not have the money to go for pre-primary, what they do is that they take their children when they are 4 years old or 5 years. And that also has an impact because they are learning with others who are already 6 years. And we talked to someone from Namayingo, had 6 children, and this person said that they were challenged because they did not understand well. It took them long to understand because they took the children early to school. And then we also noticed from the teachers at all levels that there are high rates of repetition when you do not attend nursery. And so looking through the negative consequences, still there are high dropout rates, as we have seen, that you enter, you're not able to catch up with your peers, and then you lose interest, and when you keep repeating, eventually you drop out. Then the increased inequality, because we saw that a number of schools take on people on ability to pay. So if you're not able to pay, you're always going to be left behind. But we also unequal access for children from rural areas. So I'll give another example from Omoro, is that the distance, some areas do not have nursery schools, and the distance that they have to travel to access one is so big. And because these children are still young, they are not able to walk long distances. And as a result of the work that we've been doing over time, even for the ones that are 6 years, when the distance is so long, they will walk for 2 days, and the third day they are not going to be able to go back because the legs are swollen. And then around challenges, I will not go back into that, but just to go through very fast is we have seen statistics as a result of this research that less than 1 in 10 children who should be in pre-nursery only enrolled for formal, the formal one, and then 60% not attend school at all. Then that government does not yet provide public pre-primary, but also the challenges with fees, like Joe Baker mentioned, that we have schools that are charging higher than even university fees for some courses. Bachelor of Education at Makerere is 1 million, but you'll find that there are nursery schools that are charging over that. Then the legal framework, there are challenges with for instance, Education Act, Section 10, subsection 2A, which leaves the responsibility of the provision and financing to parents. And then there are challenges with the oversight and teachers and the curriculum. And simply just a few recommendations. Everyone is going to get a copy of that report. It is extensive, and we have made recommendations to various entities. There are specific recommendations to Ministry of Education, specific recommendations to Parliament, to the development partners. But as you have heard, the key recommendations that we are making right now is that we would want government to establish at least 1 class at existing UPE schools, the schools that are implementing UPE. If we could just have 1 class there, and then we can start off from there and ensure that at least every child can have that 1 year of pre-primary, and then amending section 10, subsection 2 of the Education Act, for government to be able to fund and implement universal pre-primary education, expand capacity of training and accreditation of pre-primary teachers, and this can be done using the existing government colleges. But also we would want the Ministry of Education to have educational campaigns looking at the importance of pre-primary. And then when private actors come into this space, there are always challenges. We want our government to be in charge of education, and that education includes pre-primary. Thank you very much. I'm very glad. I was just going on the layer, but I just want to mention that the team that we have put aside to be able to make meaning of my findings, of the findings that I've presented, are all experts in the different fields, and they'll be able to break up that information, and you also have a chance to ask questions. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Angela. And in quick succession, we are going to be having the conversation with a couple of panelists that will be, as she said, breaking down what this really means from different angles and perspectives. So I'm just going to sit right up here and invite them to take their seats as well, so that we get this started. Yes, so I will be inviting the panelists. And as I invite, you can take your seat. I see Jo Baker is already up, so she could come. So Jo Baker from Human Rights Watch is one of the panelists. And then we also have Miss Mbatude Elizabeth, who is an Assistant Commissioner, Pre-Primary Education from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Elizabeth, as she takes her seat. Let's also have Daphne Mujizi, who is an ECD specialist, early child development specialist at UNICEF. And then we're also going to be joined by Hajat Namukasa Fatuma, who is a teacher at Nakasero Primary School. Yes, that is our esteemed panel today, and they will be helping us digest some of these research findings. And as you can see, by a happy accident, I happen to be the only male up here. Very happy accident. But yes, my name is Chira Brian, and starting us off, I think we shall have a word, especially from the primary duty bearers. I'll be asking someone from the Ministry of Education. I think it is only fair that we start from there. So, Miss Elizabeth, the question that I have for you is, we just want to know what the ministry's perspective on pre-primary education as a foundation for further learning is. From where you sit, what is the ministry's perspective on pre-primary education?
Thank you very much. Protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and privilege for me for having been given the opportunity to respond to a few concerns in the research report launch. Pre-primary education plays a crucial role in the child's development across multiple dimensions, including cognitive, social, emotional, linguistic, and physical domains, which provides children for foundational levels and prepares them for lifelong learning. Here are some key aspects that ministry registers. Under cognitive development, we have the foundational skills, and pre-primary education introduces basic concepts in literacy and numeracy, laying the groundwork for future learning. Activities like storytelling, singing, and playing with letters and numbers help children develop language and mathematical skills. We have also the problem solving and critical thinking. Through play and structured activities, children learn to think critically, solve problems, and develop understanding of cause and effect. Also, under cognitive development, we have the curiosity and creativity, which is engaging in diverse activities that stimulates this curiosity and encourages creativity, helping children explore and understand the world around them. Under social development, we have the interpersonal skills that are being developed under pre-primary education through interacting with peers and adults in a school setting. This helps children to learn to communicate, collaborate, share, and resolve conflicts. And understanding social norms, children learn about rules, routines, and expectations, which helps them understand societal norms and how to function with the community. Under emotional development, emotional regulation, pre-primary education provides a safe environment for children to experience and express their emotions, teaching them how to manage and understand their feelings. Self-confidence, positive interactions, and successful experiences build self-esteem and confidence in our children. Under physical development, fine and gross motor skills, we have the activities like drawing, cutting, running, and climbing, which help develop both fine and gross motor skills. Under health and hygiene, children also learn about health habits, personal hygiene, and the importance of physical activities. We have also the long-term benefits, as Aria mentioned. Most of these benefits have been justified by the previous speakers and the pre-primary teachers who were interviewed during the research. We have the academic success. Children who attend quality pre-primary programs are better prepared for primary school and are more likely to succeed academically. Social adaptation, early education helps children adapt to school environments and develop a love for learning, which can lead to better social adjustment and behavior in their future. Economic impact. Under longer-term studies, these have shown that children who receive early education are more likely to achieve higher levels of education and income, contributing positively to society and the economy. Holistic development. The pre-primary education, ladies and gentlemen, supports the holistic development of children by integrating learning and play, which fosters the balanced growth of cognitive, social, emotional, and physical skills. This well-rounded development is crucial for their overall well-being and future successes. In summary, pre-primary education is a foundational stage that significantly impacts a child's development, preparing them not just for success in school, but for productive life. I submit.
Yes, thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I think, again, in quick succession, just to have Daphne also pick it up from there, because you're an ECD specialist, I think we would want to know, from your perspective, if there is a nuance that you feel you want to add to what Elizabeth just said. Yes.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think I would echo also what the Assistant Commissioner said. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor I take not so lightly. I think Madam Elizabeth has covered most of the benefits with a lot of emphasis on the benefits to the child and the society. I think I want to highlight just two key things. One, when we look at pre-primary, it's normally looked at that, okay, it is something, you know, if you can afford, if you are able to, then you can go to pre-primary. And really, most of the barriers that most people do not attend pre-primary is the cost.
Yes.
But we want to look at it as an investment because of the benefits that it has to the child. And then we also want to say that in addition to the child, the benefits of pre-primary also escalate to the education system. And so the Ministry of Education also has a big stake in seeing that they actually deliver this pre-primary education. Why? I think it was highlighted in what Angela said and what the previous speaker said. High repetition rates. So we see children who are enrolling late into primary one because of these delays. I think we had a very good example from the child speaker here.
Yes.
We also seeing that the dropout rates are high. When I start school late, I can't keep up with my peers. People in class with me are younger than me. I'm not catching up with what is happening. And so by P5, P6, I don't even see the value of education anymore, and I will drop out. This again leads to a lot of inefficiencies in the education system. So I think as UNICEF we say we want to call for an equitable approach to access of early childhood education. There's been a lot of emphasis on rural communities, which I thoroughly agree with, but I also want to highlight another key stakeholder. These are children with disabilities and development delays. Even within Kampala, more often these are the children who are left out of school for various reasons. They need more technical things to be able to access pre-primary education. But in the spirit of the SDG, of us having equal access, all children, nobody left behind, I really would like to emphasize that this is the goal. This is what we should be looking forward to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you again, Daphne. And you know, when you left at a point of us trying to have equal access and aligning or realigning with the SDGs, and I think that in the broader scheme of things, and given that many countries are trying to achieve this, and then I'll just try to loop in Joe Baker to give us a picture of how, as Uganda, we are comparing to other countries in regards to provision of free pre-primary education.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to give a global context and look at how Uganda fits. So Human Rights Watch has surveyed the domestic legislation of every country in the world, and we find that there are at least 107 countries that in their national law guarantee at least 1 year of free pre-primary education. And there are many countries that not only guarantee 1 year, but they guarantee 2 years or 3 years, or in some cases even 4 years of free pre-primary. And the number is growing as governments recognize all of the benefits that we're talking about today. But let's look at just the African continent. So for example, Tanzania offers 1 year of free pre-primary. Ghana has offered 2 years of free and compulsory pre-primary since 2008. And Benin also offers 2 free years since 2006. Equatorial Guinea also provides 2 years of free pre-primary, and Gabon provides 3. The number of countries is growing on the continent. So for example, in 2022, Madagascar adopted a new law guaranteeing 1 year of free and compulsory pre-primary. And last year, Sierra Leone adopted a very far-reaching new education law that guarantees 13 full years of free education, starting with 1 year of pre-primary all the way through secondary school. Now, just since 2015, at least 16 countries globally have adopted or amended legislation to provide free pre-primary or to expand access. And we know that this can make a huge difference. So for example, looking at a different part of the world, when Azerbaijan adopted a new law guaranteeing free pre-primary, the participation rates skyrocketed from 25% to 83% in just 4 years. So finally, I want to note, I think the Sierra Leone example is particularly important to note because it is one of the poorer countries on the continent. In fact, the per capita GDP of Uganda is twice the per capita GDP of Sierra Leone. Yet Sierra Leone has prioritized education for its children. It's dedicating more than 20% of its national budget for education. Unfortunately, Uganda only devotes 8%. So I think one lesson we can learn from this is if a poor country like Sierra Leone can provide free nursery for all their children, I think Uganda can also. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And indeed, that statement was very stark because when you said it and you mentioned Sierra Leone, it's what also occurred to me just from hearing you say that Sierra Leone is doing this and Uganda hasn't. So I think that is a key thing to take away, that priorities and why we need to prioritize. I think that Daphne had also briefly hinted on what the cost and the benefit is. I think we shall still get later to that in detail, but then when you give that picture, I hope that we can be able to see why this is really important. We shall just move on to the end and have Hajat Fatuma also come in. I know that earlier on, and I like the fact that you were in when we're having the conversation with Kevin here, the child from Mukono. But from a teacher's perspective, we also want to know what has been your experience, because then you're in a classroom setting and you're able to interact with children that have been to preschool and those who haven't been. What has been your experience like? Oh, Hajat, you might want to come a little closer to the microphone. Is it off? Try speaking into it again. Oh, it's definitely on. Off, rather. Yes.
Thank you so much, Brian, for inviting me here as a classroom teacher and a teacher who has been in class for the last 28 years and teaching primary 1 at Nakasero Primary School. I'm so grateful to come and share my experiences with the children who have attended nursery schools. They tend to be more comfortable when they come to us in primary 1. Those who have been in nursery school, they are more comfortable with the teachers, with their peers, and they have already developed some skills like sharing, taking turns, and cooperation. They are familiar with basic concepts. They have been introduced to ideas like colors. When they come, they know the colors, the shapes, numbers, letters. When it comes to reading, they have already got the foundation of reading, the syllables, the sounds. If you happen to get a child who comes from a very good nursery school, you find that the child doesn't have any problem. They can read simple words, short sentences, and some short stories. These child, they come to us in primary 1 when they have already developed fine motor skills and they had opportunities to practice drawing, writing, and they can even coordinate eye and coordination. When they come to us in primary 1, they have already got the routine, school routine. They are familiar to this learning structure, environment, and makes it easy for them to adjust to the primary school routine. When they come to us in primary schools, our work is very easy because they are ready. They love the school. They know what is in the school. And we teachers, we enjoy teaching such learners. They know health activities when they come in the primary school. They can look after themselves. They can control their emotions. In case of anything, they can control their emotions. Those, during COVID-19, in my school, it is a UPE school, whereby many children were not going to school, and when it came to after the COVID, we had a big number of children coming to primary 1 without going to nursery schools. Before COVID, we were not receiving such learners because many parents try to take their children to nursery schools. But during COVID-19, we received the many. And being Nakasero is a UPE school, we have parents who are not earning very well. So they can't afford to go to some nursery schools. They bring them in P1 class when they are 7 years. These children, when they come, they have not attended nursery school. Sometimes they don't have love for the school because they are beginning it for the first time. They cannot share with their peers and even the teachers. We try so much that they share with us. They need extra support in adopting the classroom setting. We normally find that with such children, they lack familiarity. These learners are not familiar to the ideas like colors, shapes, numbers, letters. They don't know. These learners need more support to develop the coordination. Sometimes they cannot coordinate. The handling of pencil, the movement, the hand movement. Since all those activities, they normally receive them in a nursery school.
But also, Hajat, just right there, I'm a bit curious. When you say the extra support that they need, so in your setting, you as a teacher, do you then schedule this in terms of extra classes?
Yes. When we receive such children, in the P1 class, we have those who attended nursery, as he said, and those who never attended nursery school.
Yes.
So those who never attended nursery school, we need to go back to the basics, the foundation. They don't have the language. Since they acquire language in the nursery, they don't know how to write. So we need we give them extra support.
Yeah.
That's why we group them in that way.
Oh, first way, group them in that way, like he mentioned?
Like he mentioned.
Exactly as he mentioned. That
But
you'll have,
mine is different from his. By the time we leave, like second term,
yes.
we mix them up. Because a child who is already mature, 7 years, whatever you say, it goes on the brain and they pick very fast because they are mature enough. Yes.
Okay.
So, those are some of the experience I have
Yes.
for the children who have attended nursery and those who have not attended.
Yes. Thank you very much, Hajat. And just as you were talking and I was looking in the audience, I happened to see someone who equally taught me while I was in primary, Miss Chavanji right here at the front. And I couldn't help but think, I hope I wasn't a problem. I attended a little bit of nursery school for just a year, so I hope I wasn't emotionally all over the place and you're trying to get me into one place. But thank you for being here. And then maybe we shall get back to the panel in terms of still understanding, and I'll go back to Miss Elizabeth from the Ministry of Education. One of the things that we have definitely been asking ourselves, and even as Joe was speaking, you could hear things such as if we could have free pre-primary education. So to ask you, what are the challenges that you think have been created by the absence of this free pre-primary education in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Brian. Pre-primary education, according to Uganda's decision to forego investment in pre-primary education, such as nursery schools and kindergartens, can be analyzed through a cost-benefit framework to understand the implications on various socio-economic fronts. Here is an exploration of this scenario. For example, cost of not having pre-primary education. This causes or brings out a number of educational disadvantages. The lower academic achievement. Research indicates that children who miss out on pre-primary education often start primary school, as she has mentioned, with less developed cognitive and social skills, resulting in lower academic performance. She also mentioned about, or other speakers mentioned about, the increased dropout rates. Children who struggle in the early grades are more likely to drop out before completing their education. According to the economic impact, lower future earnings. Without a strong educational foundation, children may have reduced academic and career prospects, leading to lower lifetime earnings, higher remedial costs. The education system may incur high costs to provide remedial education, like you've been hearing her, that they must group the learners, and they have the same time as they are handling those ones who completed the nursery education. They are again handling these ones that have never tested it. Social inequality, widening gap. Children from wealthier families who can afford private pre-primary education will have a head start, exacerbating social economic disparities. Cycle of poverty. Lack of early education perpetrates a cycle of poverty, as disadvantaged children remain trapped in low-paying jobs. Some of the developmental issues. We have the delayed social skills. Early childhood education is crucial for developing social skills, which can impact personal relationships and professional success later in life. Mental health. Children who miss early education opportunities might face increased stress and anxiety due to academic struggles affecting their mental health. So, benefits of not having pre-primary education, if we may enlist them, because they are there. The benefits of not having pre-primary education. Immediate cost savings, budget relief. By not investing in pre-primary education, the government saves on immediate costs related to building infrastructure, hiring teachers, and developing curriculum for these early education programs. Reallocation of funds. Resources can be reallocated to other pressing needs, such as primary and secondary education, health care, or infrastructure development. Focus on primary education, enhance primary school resources, concentrating to limited resources on improving primary education could enhance the quality of education at this level, potentially benefiting all students. Teacher training. Funds saved from not operating pre-primary could be used better to train primary school teachers to handle children with diverse education backgrounds. Parental involvement. Like during the COVID-19 era, in the absence of formal pre-primary education, parents used to take a more active role in early childhood education, potentially leading to stronger family bonds because they had their children all the time and personalized learning experiences. But we need to remember that access to pre-primary education is essential for every child in Uganda to have the chance to survive, thrive, and meet their full potential.
Yes.
However, any attempts, mark that, however, any attempts to do away or ignore the provision of pre-primary education will lead to long-term and short-term consequences. And allow me to enlist these ones as well. To start with the short term, many have been mentioned, but when a child of age 3 to 5 is not provided with pre-primary education, he or she, as they mentioned, by Job Buck, the Children's Rights Advocacy Director, he or she misses out on early stimulation to learn when the brain is growing at its fastest, thus leading to mental retardation and resentment for learning. They already mentioned the increased dropout rates among learners at various levels. All these are short-term consequences. Increased repetition of classes leading to financial losses. Enrolling underage or overage, we have heard from him, affects the ability to understand the content at that level. When we go to the long-term consequences, ladies and gentlemen, we look at the workforce competitiveness, the skill deficit. A lack of early education may result in a workforce that is less skilled and less competitive in the global market. Under economic growth, long-term economic growth could be hampered by a less educated populace, affecting the country's overall development. Under public health, increased health costs. Poor education is linked to poorer health outcomes, which may increase public health costs in the long run. Intergenerational effects. Education impacts not just individuals, but also their children, meaning the negative effects can persist across generations. If I may talk about the social stability, the crime rate, and social issues. Lower education attainment is correlated with higher rates of crime and other social issues, potentially leading to increased government expenditure on law enforcement and social services.
Commissioner, I noticed that in speaking, I've actually just noticed that some of the things that you're also touching are in turn actually going to be touched by the other two speakers. And I know that when you start talking about this, you could go on for the entire day. I can only imagine. But what I wanted to make sure is that we try to diversify the voice a little bit, because I know that Daphne has a question that is also coming up where she will be talking about what do we
Brian,
gain,
I
what
was
do we
about to
lose,
conclude.
cost benefit. Yeah.
I was about to conclude.
Okay, just in a
While
few.
Uganda might see short-term budgetary relief by not heavily investing in pre-primary education, the long-term costs in terms of educational achievement, economic potential, social equality, and overall national development are significant. Effective cost-benefit analysis suggests that the benefits of investing in pre-primary education far outweigh the immediate savings, as early childhood education lays a crucial foundation for future academic and professional success, social stability, and economic growth.
Yes.
Therefore, policymakers need to weigh these factors carefully when deciding on educational priorities.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I like that, at one point when you were speaking, I was looking forward to what the other panelists had to say, because you talked about the benefits. And I was like, oh, we actually do have benefits. What are these? And I would love to know. But then moving on to Daphne to further add your voice to what exactly we lose, draw us that cost-benefit analysis.
Yes. Thank you very much, Brian. And I think I add the relief that when Assistant Commissioner was talking about the negative consequences, I was like, where are we? And yes, and I'm happy to see that in the end she talked about that they far outweigh, which is the key message that I wanted to bring. By starting with the statement that we look at it, I even said this earlier, mostly as a cost. But we want to shift that thinking. Let's not look at pre-primary as this is the cost. Let us look at this is an investment.
Yes.
And when I say this is an investment, Dr. Munir here in the morning said, for every shilling, this is what the research that UNICEF carried out in collaboration with the Ministry of Education. For every 1 shilling that you invest in pre-primary education, you get 16.3 back. Now, most of us here in the working field, usually we look for how to make our money add up, isn't it?
Yes.
We go for bonds, we'll go to SACCOs. We really want to increase the money that we get. But here I'm telling you, and I don't think anywhere that you will get for that 1 shilling, 16. You will not get it. This is a long-term investment that you give to your children. And I think that there is nobody here who is going to pay 1 shilling for pre-primary. But I want us to do some homework. I think the average cost is 50,000, if we say the lowest, for a term in pre-primary. You calculate that 50,000 times 16. What is it that you are getting?
Getting back, yes.
You see. So I think that's one key thing that I wanted to bring out. And I also wanted to say that often, as much as Madame Elizabeth here has talked about how important it is to invest in pre-primary, the reason that we hear the most about why that investment is actually not happening is the cost again. Yes, it is very expensive. And so we are not ready to start now. We don't have the funds. These are the reasons, and I understand that very genuine reasons that they are bringing. But in doing this research together, we were able to see applicable in Uganda. There are 3 key scenarios, and I want to really focus on these key scenarios, if you give me that time. That the ministry can take to be able to actually roll out free pre-primary education. The cost-benefit analysis talked about the first one, scenario A, which would be very fast. And it says that by 2040, if you implement this one, by 2040, you will have achieved over 90% of your children enrolled in pre-primary education. By increasing your budget, the education budget for pre-primary by 20%. This is very high. Yes, I know. In no terms, many people will say, I cannot give the 20% immediately. So there are 2 scenarios coming. I'm just begging your patience as you listen to me. 2 other scenarios. With this, in 2020, you do it very quick. 2030, this is just 6 years from now. You'll be able to achieve all children. It will no longer be a song that, we are not accessing. all children accessing pre-primary education, you would invest 4.69 trillion shillings in this, mostly in capital, because this scenario is asking for a 20% budget increase, because to roll it out quickly, you have to put in the infrastructure, you have to recruit teachers, and that cost is very expensive at the beginning. But the benefit, as she was saying, highly outweighs, because in this scenario A, it has the highest benefit. You get 193.3 trillion shillings back. Remember the math I gave you in the beginning of 1 to 16. We are translating it now economically. So the highest benefit of 193.3 trillion shillings back. In scenario B, let's say this is medium. You don't want to go very quickly. You want to be cautious and say, okay, let's study this thing as we go. And let us delay a little more by 2040, 16 years in the future. Remember now, 16 years, the child who's born will be what you'll be calling a dropout if you don't do this, because they have not gone to school early and all that. You just add about 6 to 9% to the budget, to your budget for pre-primary. This cost is actually 2.17 trillion, but you will get back 155 trillion shillings. Think about the economy. 2040, I like this year because it is also it is in line with our vision, the NPA vision. So please, this is the medium scenario B, I'm calling it. Now let's go to scenario 3. Let's say, this one we have to take very slowly, because we have UPE, we have USC, we have Makerere, there's many priorities we have for education. Let's approach this slowly. In scenario C, then you'll be able to achieve enrollment in 2062, far much ahead in the future. And with that one, you only add 4%. Maybe you say this is the one we can be able to afford. So remember the scenarios I had. Do 20%, do it very quickly, you enroll a lot. Or give 6 to 9%, in 16 years, you're better. In this one, you add 4%. Only, which is not bad, but they are only 74.5 trillion. Remember in scenario 1, you have 193 trillion. This is more than double. And you'd only invest less than 1 trillion shillings. So remember in the first scenario, I was talking about almost 5 trillion shillings. In the second scenario, I was talking about 2 trillion. And now this is a little less than 1 trillion. So really, the emphasis in these scenarios is to say it is possible. And I want to highlight, I think Madam Commissioner did talk about some of this. I want to highlight something key. We've talked about repetition, high repetition rates. And it has, I just wanted to bring a statistic to show, yes, we know that some children who attend pre-primary may also repeat, but this rate is much lower. It's 23% compared to 50% who did not attend pre-primary. So of those who did not attend pre-primary, if we say right now, we are going as we are, let us continue. We are incurring this cost in high repetition. But if we are able to invest, what would happen, and this is very key, what would happen is that you would save 24.5 billion by 2030. This is a huge cost saving. And if you extrapolate this money, the scenarios I was talking about, and say, for example, let's start with scenario B, you'll be able to have the funds and enroll these children. We talked about dropout rate, the efficiency of the education system. We've mentioned that there are many overage or underage children. So with the underage children, we are already paying for them when they come before they are 6 years old. If we took those costs and invested them in the actual quality pre-primary education, we would be right on the mark. With the overage children, we are spending a lot of resources. I like Madam Hajat here, who was talking about how in her scenario, I think it is one of the best scenarios I've had, where they are able to give extra support to the children who did not go to preschool. In most cases, these children are left behind in overcrowded classrooms. Nobody attends to them. The teacher will move with the ones who are moving. Then these children will repeat. Again, you're spending efforts teaching the same child, trying to take them to a certain level. This same child may be the one who will drop out. We want to be able to attain our indicators and be at par with the countries that, and in moving forward. So we want to be able to say, yes, our children are enrolling on time, they are completing on time, and they are achieving this is going to give us these benefits that I talked about, that 193.3 trillion, and help us to achieve and take Uganda to a better place and achieve the vision for Uganda. Thank you very much, Brian. I'll stop here.
Yes, thank you, Daphne. And I think you just got Joe at the right moment, because when you talk about the next stage that Uganda would be propelled to if this was in place, and that is what we want to know from her perspective. What do you think that place would look like in terms of social and economic development, that we had this free pre-primary education, if we had it?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. But first, I just want to thank Madam Elizabeth. I think your comments provided one of the most compelling arguments for free pre-primary that I've ever heard. So thank you very much. So we've talked a lot about the benefits, but to sort of envision what Uganda would be like if there was free universal pre-primary for every child, I think we can look at 4 key levels. One is the child. The benefits are undeniable. We've heard over and over this morning about children who attend nursery do better in school, they have better health, better job prospects, higher income as adults. One thing we haven't heard yet this morning is that pre-primary also contributes to lower rates of child labor, lower rates of child marriage, and lower rates of teen pregnancy. Second level, parents benefit. Pre-primary education increases the employment, the earnings, and the productivity of parents, especially mothers who are able to rejoin the workforce earlier because they're relieved of child care responsibilities. And there are some studies that suggest that half of the cost of pre-primary can be funded simply through the increased tax revenues from women's increased employment. Third, as Daphne and, well, actually all of our panelists have pointed out, is that it benefits the educational system. Despite Uganda's UPE and USE, we know that outcomes are still poor. Only 40% of Ugandan children complete primary school. But providing just 1 year of free and compulsory pre-primary can increase primary completion rates by 12%. And scaling up pre-primary, as we've heard, also can reduce repetition by 50% and cut dropout rates by half. And finally, it benefits societies. There was a study that came out last year looking at global economic development. It found that over the past 40 years, half of global economic growth has been because of investments in education. And that education investments have also been responsible for 40% of extreme poverty reduction. Isn't that amazing? Yes. That half of the world's global economic growth has been because of education. And we know that pre-primary education can reduce social and economic inequalities. This is particularly important for Uganda, which has the 35th highest rate of gaps between the wealthy and the poor in the world. And as Madam Elizabeth also mentioned, it can reduce public health expenditures in law enforcement, in medical care, and the justice system. So, we've heard from Daphne about the cost-benefit analysis, and there have been multiple studies over the years that show that investing in pre-primary education is truly one of the best returns of any investment. So I think it's no exaggeration to say that ensuring that every child in Uganda has access to free and quality nursery is one of the best things that Uganda could do for its future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That sounded very visionary and prophetic. But yes, just to say, I think we can all agree that one of the common denominators in the conversation is that it is important, and it is circular in its effect or its impact, in the sense that it not happening has impact on several other things. It could be from health, it could be economic development, as you're saying. So I think that further emphasizes the imperative. And then lastly, I'll just go to Hajat Fatuma, and then we shall be wrapping up with the panel discussion. And it could be that some of the things you had briefly hinted on them, but we just want to know what some of those challenges have been that you faced as a teacher due to the status quo being that we do not have government pre-primary education. What are some of those challenges as a teacher?
Thank you very much, Brian. Okay. Thank you very much, Brian. As you have all heard about the benefits, it all comes back to the primary teacher. Once a child does not go to the nursery school, the workload for the primary teacher is too much, because sometimes we need to intermarry and get the framework for the nursery school, and we support these children to help them to improve in the learning process. We also have limited resources as a challenge. In a nursery school, we have what we call play learning. They play through games, storytelling, having many materials in nursery school, whereby in primary schools, it is hard for us to have those play materials. When you look at some nursery schools which are well facilitated, children learn many things from those nursery schools. But in primary school, we have a syllabus to follow, and we find that sometimes we don't complete that syllabus just because we are going back to pick the framework of nursery. That is also a challenge to us. In order to get performance, you have to go back and teach this child some nursery work, like introduction to letters, sounds, because it limits you. You cannot teach a child when she or he doesn't know how to read and write. In lack of preparation, these children are not prepared. We spend more time on foundation learning because they are not prepared to be in school. The nursery schools prepare them for us, but we find that challenge that they are not prepared to be in school. We also find it difficult in assessing readiness of the learners. Teachers may struggle to assess students' readiness for primary school. We also have lack of support staff. Since we have two groups of people of learners in one class, we need support staff, those people who are there to help them to learn the nursery, like taking them to toilets. Since we receive them when they have already learned how to go to toilet, but we need that support staff to help us in primary schools. And another challenge we have is a big number of children coming in a P1, primary one. You find that in a primary school like Nakasero, P1 we have 120 learners, and there are 2 teachers there, and these teachers these learners, they are of different abilities, since some of them never went to their nursery schools. We also have the challenge of the curriculum. Teachers may need to adopt the curriculum to meet the changes. It is time consuming for us if we have to get the other curriculum. These challenges are important for we need the government. I'm concluding by saying that we need the government to create more pre-primary schools in government schools to reduce the workload we have for children who have not gone in pre-primary schools. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Fatuma, for wrapping it up very beautifully. And at this point, I will be relieving my panelists. I would have loved to have a parting shot from all of you, but then I also know there is a session where we're going to have the audience ask a few questions, and that will yet be another opportunity for us to say a thing or two. Otherwise, thank you very much for the deliberations. I think you'll all agree with me that they've been a very brilliant panel, haven't they? Oh, I can't hear that. Have they? Yes, thank you. You can now take your seats. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. So what is going to happen at this moment, we realize that you've been without sugars for a very long period of time. You've been seated. I can see on this table, the madam over here is looking at me and smiling at the good news that I've just talked about. But yes, we shall be having a break. So at this moment, but we shall be having a very short break, and that is for 10 minutes. So in this moment, you'll just step out, you grab a bite. There is tea over there. I'm sure you saw it while you're coming in. So just grab it quickly and come back in. In exactly 10 minutes, we shall be continuing with the program, and that will be the launch of the research report. Yes, so let's step out quickly. invite Hajat Safina Mutumba to come up and have some words to say. Before then, we have the next speaker who will be launching. So Hajat Safina from the Ministry of Education. The time is now.
Thank you very much. By the way, I'm a teacher by profession. As Hajat Fatima was speaking, I was reflecting on my P1 in P1. So whatever situation she was narrating is the actual situation I went through. So I value teachers. It can only be done by passionate teachers, but not every teacher. And when this son of mine was giving his communication, I really felt sad that how I wish I handled him during my time. When I was a teacher, he would be a doctor now in making. Thank you very much. I'm happy that so many people are picking interest in ECD, including government and its agencies. And with us, we don't just focus at pre-primary education. As an ECD specialist, I look at the whole of ECD, because just handling the education bit of it does not bring up a holistic child. That's why even at any level, we value it. Allow me commend ISER and human rights. With us as technocrats, whenever we get data, it helps us to speak with authority. But when we don't have data, it becomes so difficult to defend our position. So now that we are in the period of developing the PIAP, the strategic plan for the next 5 years, this report is going to be very significant in helping us identify the areas that will be supported. For example, when you look at the 6 program areas that National Planning Authority has given us, one of them is to improve foundational human capital development. And surprisingly, early childhood care and education is number 1. And according to the way we packaged it, we want to expand the training of pre-primary teachers, because whenever we have been requesting our minister to take over pre-primary education, the issue has been we don't have the teachers. Now, there will be no excuse, because we know what it means. And one of the challenges government is grappling with are the big enrollments in the UPE schools, claiming to be P1 learners, yet the majority are below the age of 6. So even the president is aware of that. And it's the reason that he wants to begin supporting, beginning with the underserved areas. So I want to allay your fears. Government has already picked interest in pre-primary education. And now that you have people like myself and Abdul Malik handling pre-primary education, we are the voices of the voiceless, because we are teachers and we were primary teachers at one time. Allow me take this opportunity, and you have made a mistake making me to call the minister, because I'm already a teacher. I'm a politician. I'm an expert in ECD. If I begin speaking, I might be like the person Brian talked about. So allow me to invite the minister to come and give his remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hajat Safina. At least a minister for a day. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm now going to be formal as a minister. The UNICEF representative, Dr. Munir, in absentia, the chair board, ISER, Dr. Juma Nyende, the executive director, ISER, Madam Angela Kasure, assistant commissioner representing the Commissioner of Basic Education, colleagues from Ministry of Education and Sports, the director, Children's Rights Advocacy at Human Rights Watch, Madam Jo, senior government officials present, development partners, civil society organizations, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. I'd already registered the minister's apologies. I will not repeat that. I want to go straight to the message the minister has for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I salute and warmly welcome you all to this colorful event of launching the report on pre-primary education in Uganda. I want to acknowledge and commend the efforts of the Human Rights and the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights to conduct research and come up with the report that we are launching today. Before I proceed, I wish to highlight the fact that the government of Uganda enjoys unmatched commitment towards eliminating inequalities and barriers in the access to education, especially among the vulnerable and marginalized groups in our society. For instance, in 1997, we commenced the implementation of the Universal Primary Education, a program that has granted opportunities to millions of people to access primary education. Later on, the government realized that many children that were completing primary education level but unable to join secondary education due to unaffordability of the school fees. Consequently, in 2007, 10 years after the commencement of the implementation of UPE, we introduced the free secondary education program, thus becoming the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to introduce universal secondary education. Concerning the delivery of pre-primary education, in the Education, Pre-Primary, Primary and Post-Primary Act of 2008, the government assigned the responsibility of establishing and running pre-primary schools to private agencies or persons, and the financing of such education to parents or guardians of the children. On its part, the government committed itself to the following: 1, to provide curriculum, guidelines on minimum standards for school buildings, equipment, and other relevant facilities for pre-primary institutions through its relevant agencies. 2, provide the curriculum for teacher training for pre-primary teachers and ensure that the teachers who teach in pre-primary institutions have the necessary qualifications. 3, cause all the pre-primary schools to be licensed, registered, and regularly inspected by government education inspectors. So those were the 3 core responsibilities of government, having assigned the responsibility of providing pre-primary education to the private sector. The above commitment has to some extent facilitated access to pre-primary education. However, we are still grappling with the challenge of limited access to pre-primary education, especially in rural areas. Yet, it is a vital stage in building the foundation for human capital development and our country's general socio-economic growth. Early childhood learning has profound long-term benefits for children's cognitive and social development. Their health, future education attainment, and employment, plus other opportunities later in life. Interesting to note is that the pace of brain development is at its highest in the first years of life. So this period represents a critical opportunity to make a positive difference in children's lives. Pre-primary education also mitigates inequalities among children from families of different incomes and contributes to country's economic development since it improves employment prospects and earnings. This is not only beneficial to the individuals, but even to the state, because a productive population is capable of contributing to state growth through increased revenue, resulting in increase of taxes. Furthermore, the realization of the free quality pre-primary education would require both physical and legal commitments and reforms. Currently, the government's obligation towards pre-primary education is majorly regulatory. So its responsibility here is regulation. And I want to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that a week ago, government or cabinet approved the ECC policy. And I think this is a very big milestone in the development of ECD in the education sector. The provision and financing obligations rest with the private sector and parents or guardians respectively. Government's plan is to consolidate on the UPE before it turns fully to pre-primary education. However, it's important to note that the government has not just realized, it has always been regulating and guiding on pre-primary education. That's why we mentioned that the government has been licensing and registering the pre-primary schools. For the government to take on the responsibility of providing free primary education, pre-primary education, it will necessitate an amendment of Section 10(2) of the Education Pre-Primary, Primary and Post-Primary Act of 2008. But that one shouldn't be an impediment. It can be very fast when the government is ready to fully take on pre-primary education. Additionally, the government, if possible, will need to commit funds to provide infrastructure, human resource, and instructional materials to guarantee access to pre-primary education, especially in rural areas. As a Ministry of Education and Sports, we have a clear procedure which we normally follow that includes discussing the recommendations of the report like this one in our senior management and top management, and consequently presenting the same recommendation to cabinet for adoption by the entire government. So that's the procedure government has to take, especially on this report. It may take some time to go through the necessary levels of debating, but nevertheless it can be done and the recommendations implemented thereafter. Once again, I want to thank the research team, the Human Rights Watch, and ISER for coming up with this comprehensive report on pre-primary education in Uganda, and it's the greatest wish, and it is my greatest wish to see that the recommendations therein are followed up and implemented as soon as possible. I thank you for listening to me, and thank especially our friends from the International Children's Watch who are here, who joined us in this launch, ISER, all the stakeholders, the ministry officials who have been part of this research, and all other people. We say thank you for your contribution. I therefore take this opportunity to officially launch this report for God and my country. Thank you. And the ISER and this.
There are markers down there. So you just sign. These can be used.
Okay. I've already performed a ritual, but I can repeat it. I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sports to officially
Microphone. The handheld one. It's over here.
I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sports to officially launch this report, which has come out of the research conducted by ISER, and now the report is officially launched. And okay. So the report now is launched.
Yes. You can have some of the other officials sign as well. Yes, had you just step back a little bit, shall have a group picture. Yes, we're very happy that we've gotten to this phase of this function. And just to say that what you see here, and I'm thinking many of you would have gotten a copy of this, but what you see here is a summary. It's a summary of the report, so it's not the actual comprehensive report. To get a copy, you can go to the ISER website. We have it uploaded on there, but we also have physical copies at the office. But this is simply a summary. And before I forget, as we get into the next segment of this program today, I just want to, send a shout out or introduce the amazing people that have been so far doing the job of sign language interpretation. We have one of them, Nachigozi Olivia, who is right here, and then Wycliffe Bukenya. Wycliffe is seated right there. Thank you very much. They do this professionally. So people, if you ever need their services, be sure to reach out. I think for all the time that I worked, even before I got into civil society, I'd met these gentlemen, this gentleman and this lady. It's like every single event they are doing this. So thank you for the amazing work. Yes, now what we're going to do is, before we get into the section of the Q&A, and I like that most of our panelists are still around. If you have questions, we hope that you have them ready. If you feel you might not be able to ask the question yourself by voice, you can send over a cheat. It will still be read, but just to let you know that that session is coming up. Now, briefly, at this moment, I'm going to invite one of the other younger friends of ours who came in a little bit later, and we shall have a discussion with him as well. I believe he's from Chitante. Yes, Chitante Primary. So I'll have him also come and just join me here briefly for a few minutes, and then we shall get into the Q&A. Yes. Yes, so we have with us Waiduba, Mark. Yes, Mark is from Chitante Primary School, and Mark will also be sharing his experience. Unlike what we did with Kevin, Mark came quite prepared, because when we told Mark that we needed to hear his experience, Mark actually went back and typed out his experience. So Mark is simply going to read for us, narrate for us, whatever it is that he has written down. Mark did get the benefit of going to a preschool, and so just listen to him.
New joint report on pre-primary nursery education in Uganda. Experience. Our dear guest of honor, the invited guests, the government education officials present, education development partners, the civil society, members of parliament present today, our beloved parents and teachers, all our fellow pupils and students here today. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Waiduba Mark Mwesigwa from Chitante Primary School, the best school in the world. And I am in primary 6. I'm glad to meet you, and especially very glad to have the opportunity to stand before you and say something in connection with my experience on how going through pre-primary education, nursery, has helped me in primary school. To begin with, pre-primary education is the education got before joining a primary section, and it is very important in as far as learners education foundation is concerned. Personally, I went through Dick and Jen Nursery School in Makerere, and I got a number of good experiences that I would love to share with you today. First and foremost, during my pre-primary education, I was taught how to speak properly, and that is why I can stand before you and say something. Secondly, I was also taught how to spell and pronounce words correctly, and I now can spell and pronounce very many words properly. Thirdly, my good teachers also taught me some educative songs and rhymes, which are still helping me to perform.
A case in point is the National Integrated Early Childhood Policy of 2016. We also have the Child's Act and the other numerous documents. So I would suggest that maybe we review our methodology and also include these documents in the report. Thank you.
Well, so it's a comment. Okay, it's a comment, but it can still be responded to. And I think what he was saying is that from a review of the report, he noticed that you were talking about global policies, and for him, he wanted to see some of the more domestic policies in Uganda mentioned as well. Example given the Children's Act, and he's talking about also the National Integrated Policy. Yes. And others. Okay. Comment noted. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the team that led into this research. I have three areas that I really need to speak to. One, coming from the report, it is glaringly clear that access is a problem. We all know that children who are supposed to be in these early years have not got access. We need to really do a lot, and I'm happy that the report has brought up some data of the numbers that are accessing vis-a-vis the numbers that we enroll. So we need to really do something about it, because even the recommendations are clear. We are already spending indirectly. So my message is we need to work on access collectively. Number two is we need to create more advocacy to the powers that be. This is one of the starting points, but we know that policy and systems of this country are taken from different tables. We need to take our report to the people that matter. We have an education committee in Parliament. I think they are so much interested in such reports because they add a lot of value. I would suggest that this good report is shared widely so that when they go to debate, they have a message they can put on table. Number three is the dissemination of the report. I don't know whether it is ending with this national one, but I would suggest that we go regional too. Because when everybody learns of what is happening, maybe, before even the government comes in, somebody will do some work at this or the areas that matter. So advocacy, dissemination, we need to do something more. And then finally, I want to applaud our department, our division of pre-primary for the great work they have done, because we now have a policy that is guiding implementation of pre-primary education in this country. What needs to be done is now to operationalize the framework. For those of you who don't know, in some areas, early childhood education has been taking place, but every person has been implementing according to interest or their personal interest. But of recent, about 3 or 4 years ago, the learning framework came out, and the team, Sajat Safina and Malik and the other commissioner that was here, have been doing some good work in making the community appreciate that we have a framework. We need to go extensive so that what we do at one level is national. If a child crosses from Gulu and wants to come and join Chitante Primary School, but has had opportunity to access pre-primary education in Gulu, he should be able to fit because the framework is implemented well and everybody is at par. This will help to create more ground, because every class teacher, like Mike Ogi Fatuma said, when the children are accessing, they will not have any challenge. The teacher of Kabera Maido, the teacher of Gulu will have the same background to start from. But today, the situation in the primary schools is different. You go and see a school that a child has attended pre-primary, but when they access, they have different perception of issues. So we need to really do things differently. We need to create more advocacy. We need to disseminate the reports, but we also need to standardize the implementation of the learning framework. I thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Or there? Yes, 1, 2, and then we shall have answers.
I would also like to add my voice to commend the team that gathered this information for the very well researched information that was given. I would want to comment on the social bit of it. Mine will be general. Yes, I agree that we really need pre-primary education, but then I am looking at the social bit of it, whereby someone mentioned the fact that supporting pre-primary education will help the mothers by relieving them the duty of staying with the children to go back to work for economic development. I am looking at it in the social bit of it. You will agree with me, colleagues, that today we have more individualistic children and society, the youth. And partly I attribute that to the lack of care that the mothers are giving to the children. You will agree with me that this stage is very delicate. It needs a mother to be with the children. And you will find out that in primary, you will find out that primary education will expose these children to societies and individuals, other children from other families that might not be able to uphold the social behaviors of society. Colleagues, look around the primary schools we have. Many of them are in dilapidated state. And then we are taking these vulnerable children to these situations. UPE has, I will say, is not yet gaining the momentum that we want, and now we want to add another burden to the government. I don't know how we are doing that. I am thinking of trying to merge. Maybe we can merge the curriculum of nursery with the one of primary, and I loved the recommendation of reducing the years, at least 1 year to go to, instead of 3 years, you put them to 1 year in pre-primary, and then they can continue instead of 3 years. So and the other thing is on the recommendation. There is a recommendation to the government of Uganda, to the Ministry of Education and Sports, and Parliament, to the Ministry of Education and Sports. Who is government of these? I am seeing all these recommendations being divided, but they are all targeting one person. So I think we should look more at the social and moral bit of it before we go full board to support early childhood. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to have one last question on here. His hand, yes, his hand was up. and then we shall first have a round of answers.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. MC. My name is Robert Sewagude, and I come from the Uganda National Association of the Deaf. First, I want to register our appreciation to the management of ISER. Dr. Juma, the team that you assembled has brought forth persons with disabilities, especially deaf persons, and really grateful for that. And for that matter, ISER led the deaf persons to put this government to court in accessing health care for persons with hearing impairment, and we are happy. Much as court spoke very big English, Mr. Musa there tried to simplify it for us, and right now the government has enrolled sign language interpreters in different health centers. So thank you very much, ISER. The topic before us, laying a foundation for all children. I'd like to draw your attention to children with disabilities, especially those with hearing impairment, in regards to nursery education. We don't have a lot of gaps therein. I'll give an example. While you people are talking about language acquisition in those first 4 or 5 years, as a deaf child going to school, this child has never mastered any language, and they go straight into P1 without a language. So it's a very big gap, because without sign language for these deaf children, they really cannot perform anything in school. And this is also evident within the PLE exams that have been released over the years, and that shows the greatest performance, which is very, very poor, of persons with hearing impairment. Without a language, you can literally teach no one in life, because like I said, with recent exams release, we had no one in Division 1, none in Division 2. In your research, you talked about the 26 schools that were sampled. I wonder whether we could have a disaggregation, whether any of those had children with the disabilities. It may not be intentional, but that shows the negative attitude towards the society against our children with disabilities. So the government has always been implementing the SDGs of leaving no one behind, but in practice, it's not out there. We as UNAD have tried to do our level best, and we continue to have ourselves out there and open for any collaboration such that we can push the agenda of deaf education in this country. And we believe children with disabilities can be enrolled, especially those with hearing impairment, can be enrolled in all the schools around to have at least a positive, to uplift their plight in education. Thirdly and closely, the accessing environment. I'll talk about disability in general, whereby all the schools that you may have visited, you may have an option of repeating a class because of the level of cognition of the concepts in class. But for us as deaf persons and persons with disabilities, our only option is the dropout. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for that round of questions. Now we shall have yes, we shall have people on that table. I've just noticed that people on that table answer the questions that have been asked.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will begin with appreciating my brother who has represented children with disability. What we have to appreciate is that change is a gradual process. As I appreciated ISER and the Human Rights Watch for this report, allow me to say that even Rome was not built in a day. Originally, we have been having the 2007 education sector ECD policy, which was not so comprehensive, but now to begin with, you're lucky that you have competent people within the pre-primary division. Secondly, we we have got now a comprehensive policy, that is early childhood care and education, which has a strong component on care, which advocates for the holistic child, which was approved on 14th May 2024. And after approval of the national teacher policy, government has gone ahead to begin training the pre-primary teachers, which wasn't originally the case. Secondly, government was registering other teachers and leaving out pre-primary teachers. But as I speak now, government has started the journey of registering pre-primary teachers. What does that imply? That means that the government has a will to take on pre-primary education. I experienced this during the cabinet meeting when the ECCE policy was approved. All the ministers were advocating for government to take on pre-primary education for children beginning from the age of 3 years. Almost the whole house, including the prime minister. And surprisingly, the president was aware of the under children in our UPE schools. And that was aligned to the opening of UPE, that people no longer have maids to take care of their children. And to allay your fears is that the reason to why this policy focuses at children birth to 6 years, it has put in consideration the daycare centers for working mothers, because government is aware. Our children too went to pre-primary when they were below. So this means that when you look at the ECCE policy, it has 5 policy objectives and strategies. Whatever we are discussing here is all entailed into those strategies. When you look at the first one, increasing equitable access to quality, inclusive, and sustainable early childhood care and education. And when you look at the 5-year strategic plan we have developed, the statement is implement the ECCE policy. The second strategy is to strengthen the structures and systems for effective standardization and management of early childhood care and education service delivery. The third one is to increase public awareness on ECCE programs and promote appropriate partnerships with parents, guardians, communities, and civil society organizations for effective early learning. Because early childhood is something tricky, as one of the ladies stated. It requires the whereby each stakeholder is moving together. And when you look at the benefit, one of the benefits of pre-primary education is parental involvement and community involvement. Why? As pre-primary schools take on children, parents will go to work, creating revenue for the government. That is very significant. Then also ensuring early identification of children with disabilities. If we don't have pre-primary schools, it will take long for somebody to know a child who has disabilities. That implies by where you would have supported that child early enough, you wait until he or she is 7 or 6 to go to primary. Yet the pre-primary teachers, the ones we have these days, are not the teachers we had. They like us. They might not even care. When you go to the field, you ask for children with disability, they will tell you we don't have any. But no sooner do you stand before the class, you would have already identified over 10 children with disability. Then the fourth one, to increase staff capacity of the Ministry of Education and Sports and the local governments to support, standardize, guide, implement, coordinate, monitor, evaluate, regulate, and promote quality, relevant, and affordable ECCE services for all. The last one is to mainstream cross-cutting issues into all aspects of ECCE service delivery and provision. Those include health issues, gender-related issues, children with disability, HIV, and ICT in pre-primary. So that is the comprehensive strategy we are focusing at as government. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So then we shall have the other panelists also in brief answer. I don't know if Daphne also had a question.
No, I want to respond. Yes. Thank you so much, Brian. I think allow me I didn't have an opportunity in the panel to say thank you to Human Rights Watch and ISER for this very great report. I think it's really important that I register this appreciation. And really, I think in this report, what I love most is the voices of the community that are coming out very loud. Oftentimes we are talking as technical people, we are talking as politicians, leaders, community leaders, but it's really wonderful to hear directly from people in the community the importance of that they really want access to pre-primary, but cost is the barrier. Okay, so that said, I think I want to respond to just a few things that came up. To begin with, I wanted to talk to the lady who talked about where do we start from. I think there was a question around the talk about people who are going to who study and they end up going to be maids in the Middle East, or they don't have jobs and things like that. I really want to make this very clear for all of us that the highest return for this investment is in the early years. The highest return. So if you say, my child will miss pre-primary, I will try and give them money, they can start in P1 and try to catch up, and then I'll also make sure they go to university, you are missing the point. Please, you are. And I'm going to try and convince you why. We look at, I'll interest you actually with research. James Heckman, if you can just write that name down and look for that study. There's a very nice graph that summarizes the whole picture. If I could, I would have flashed it. It talks about the highest return of investment being in the prenatal years to begin with. Prenatal, why? Learning begins even before you are born. Did you hear me? Learning begins even before. So here when we are saying preschool, we are trying to catch it at step 3. Step 1 is before you are born, prenatal. Your mother, how is she prepared to have a healthy and safe child, most importantly? That will also address or reduce, mitigate effects of children with disabilities. At that stage, prenatal. Next, we come to 0 to 3, early stimulation. So these are children who would be in what we'd call a daycare. Hajat Safina has talked about that, because the age we're talking about here really for preschool is 3. So 0 to 3, you're mostly at home. And what is happening at home? How are your parents or your family helping you to learn? You know, all the benefits that we talked about, they start at home. All the development domains, cognitive, social-emotional, physical, everything like that starts at home. That is the second step in the investment. The third step is preschool. You put all this together, if you invest in these 3 steps, you will have achieved what I was talking about in terms of the returns on investment. So I wanted to make that very clear to say where to start from is here, not in university. If you see that curve, it talks about university. Down here, the returns are the lowest when you want to make more investment at those stages. Okay, I hope I've answered that one. Next, I wanted to look at my friend here who was talking about, can we merge?
Yes.
Can we make a saving and at least do these classes together? And I think I wanted to introduce the concept of developmentally appropriate practices. This stage is very fragile, as we talked about it. I think even as a mother, you also said it. These children are very fragile. And of course, you're concerned about who you're letting them be with, and are they safe, and are they going to learn? I think in light of that, looking at brain development, it's very, very important that we take the steps that are appropriate for your age.
Yes.
If I put that analogy, when a child is born, you don't say, oh, because I don't have milk, you're going to eat food. The child is not ready for that. Let's put that same analogy into this preschool. You don't say, okay, we'll wait and you just, because you're growing, just go and start P1 and you'll catch everything. I think we've had very good examples here that have shown us how that is not working. So let us ensure that it's ideal. I think the poll is saying have at least 1 year. The 1 year is because we're looking at our resources. It's not saying that's the ideal, but it's better than nothing. But the more ideal is if you invest in the full preschool. And I think lastly, did I talk about? Yeah, the children with disabilities. Just to also commend my brother from UNAD and say that we also, at UNICEF, we really advocate for the early identification and early intervention. Because like I mentioned, when it's done early, that is the best. When, as Safina said, if you identify the child at 3 years when they come to preschool, it's better than when they come at 7 years. Yeah. Likewise, if you identify the child when they are born or when they are 0 to 3, it is even better. I just want to highlight one program that we are piloting in southwestern Uganda that's called the Interventions for Disability in Early Childhood, where we are targeting children 0 to 3, screening them. Then you're able to identify children with disabilities and developmental delays, and then we do interventions, early interventions to support these children. And really, this pilot has shown us that this intervention works. It also helps to reduce on stigma, because before we brought in this program, many parents were hiding these children. These are children who are not seen in the society. Even those who manage to access preschool, they are lucky. They are a percentage of those. There are those with severe disabilities that don't leave the house and they remain there. So really, we've seen this program is working, and we are working together with Ministry of Gender and Ministry of Education. It's a program that we want to advocate that it is scaled up so that not only children in southwestern Uganda, Mubende and Kasanda, where we are, but the whole country, all the children with disabilities and developmental delays need to, they have a right, and they have a seat on the table. It is not asking, it is not begging, they should be there. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think Musa also had a couple of questions to answer.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much to the people who have asked the questions and made the comments, and to Hajat Safina Mutumba and Daphne is here for responding to some of the issues that have come across. Musa Mugoya, I work with the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, ISER. Just to respond to some of the questions and the comments and the clarifications that have come through. One about the whether we're in a position to interact with the teachers who are dealt with the learners who had attended nursery and those ones who had not attended nursery. That one we did, and they told us, of course, the experiences they went through, and even just to add on what Hajat Fatma was also talking about. But mainly, actually, they explained that there is a stark difference between the learner who has attended nursery and the one who has not attended, in terms of their abilities, in terms of their familiarity with the school. They also telling us that for some of them, especially for some classes, you find that where the teacher will even go ahead to separate the learners, those ones who have attended will be put in another corner, those ones who have not attended will be put in another corner, those ones who attended for 1 year will also be put in another space. And so the teacher is trying to manage like 3 classes in one class. So that was the feedback that we got. The other aspect, whether we're in a position to, for example, establish children with disabilities. The research really was not about looking at access to pre-primary school, but a certain category. So it was looking at general access to pre-primary education. And even that, we found that, of course, you would find those learners that have male disability, especially physical, you would find them in nursery school. But those ones, let me say, the deaf and the blind, we never found any. And the communities that we were going into were really far in the rural areas, so we never got those ones. About the attitudes of parents, yes, I would say it is also attitude, but also it's a question of affordability, because for some parents and even some inspectors of schools and the head teachers up country, they told us that a parent will be asked to provide the food, for example, at a UPE school, and buy instructional materials and uniform, to a child who is in primary 1, primary 2, anyway, primary school. So most of them looked at it as, first of all, a burden, but also more of a luxury now. Because I mean, I can't even feed the one who is in primary. Why should I pay school fees to take this one, to nursery? So some of them, that was the issue. So it may be, we may take it as an issue of attitude, but largely it was an issue of what? Affordability. Then the my brother from the ministry asked a question about one, about the policies, whether we consider the Ugandan policies. When you look at page 15, we made reference to the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. One, pointing out the fact that, for example, under Article 30, there is a general recognition of the right to education. Then you look at Article 34, Clause 2, that recognizes the right to basic education. Of course, now it can be a question of interpretation because constitutions are written in a broad way. So basic education can also be interpreted to mean pre-primary education. Then definitely also made reference to universal primary and secondary education. We understand that there is no written policy document on UP and use, but in practice, the policies are what? Are there because the programs are being implemented. Though I think I understand where the challenge is coming from, much as the fact that we made reference to the international law and policies. For Ugandan laws and policies, we discussed them under the Uganda's education system. And you find that in there, we made even reference to Education Act, how it does not, as far as pre-primary education is concerned, is an obligation of the private sector. Then the financings by parent and the guardians. We made reference to the framework which was issued by National Curriculum Development Center, the compact which was entered into between the government and the donors as far as education is concerned. Hajabe talked about the issue of dissemination and sharing the report. I entirely agree with you. We have even ahead of this launch, we have tried to share the report with the key stakeholders, but we also take on the responsibility to go back to the local governments where we did the research to share with them the report. In terms of Parliament, we have the research team from the Education Committee of Parliament. They are here. We took it that being that we also invited the members of Parliament, but I think they were caught up with other schedules. They were not in position to turn up. But the most important thing is that the technical team is here, and usually they are the ones who do the reports and everything. Then in terms of the recommendation, there was an issue about the recommendation. Why are we having general recommendations and then we have specific recommendations? You find that it was quite difficult for us to assign each and every recommendation to each and every government ministry or agency. It is the reason why we have a general recommendation on the government of Uganda, other general recommendations. And in there, of course, you find that those are recommendations that will target Parliament, will target Cabinet, will target Minister of Education, but in a general way, because sometimes you find that if it is appropriating money, different agencies have, different ministries and government departments and agencies have different roles to play. From Minister of Finance to Parliament, from the programs now, like Minister of sub-programs now that have to what? To prepare their expenditures and all that. So it is the reason why we have the general ones and we have the specific ones. Last, I think I've actually managed to respond to all of them. In case there are any other additional clarifications, I'm available during lunch. But also the other thing is that if it is a question which is really specific about education, I'm not an educationist. The educationist in the room, they can respond to that. I can only restrict myself to how the research was conducted and maybe issues of policy and law. Beyond that, issues which are for education in terms of the technical matters as far as education is concerned that go deep into issues of education. Daphne is here, and Hajat Safin is also around. And Hajab is also around. We have many people from Ministry of Education. They can handle that. Thank you.
Yes, Musa, and those Joe has something to say, right? Nothing? Okay. I just wanted to say there was something also, and maybe you might correct me, but it should have been the gentleman who was asking about how the percentages were gotten to the 85% licensed and registered, and I thought that was data that is
sorry,
available.
I'd forgotten it. Let me respond to that. It is on page 57, right?
Yes.
So actually, that data we picked it from a report from a study by UNICEF and the Ministry of Education and Sports.
Okay.
But the original data for that original data came from a study by Ministry of Gender. Ministry of Gender Commission, National Planning Authority, to conduct that study. So, if you look at footnote 195, it really provides where we got that information from. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that has been a comprehensive response to all the questions that have been asked. And as Musa has said, if there is anything that is still itching you, you should feel free to approach any of them over lunch or something as we interact after here. Now at this point, I believe we are well a little bit of our time. So yes. So as we have the closing remarks coming up, also to just let you know that the full copy of the report is now with us. I saw some colleagues distributing. I hope allow me to invite Dr. Juma Nyende to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies, for inviting me to make the closing remarks. As you can look at the program, I'm not the one who is supposed to have made the remarks, but I'm standing in for Haji Mulindwa, who was actually also standing in for the minister. So I think I'm also incidentally standing in for the minister. No, take that to be a joke. Right. We can't be more than grateful for the participation and for your involvement and honoring of the invitations that were extended to you. I believe we have been able to record over 90% attendance, and I think that is very good. Allow me join others who are thanking in their hearts by way of clapping the team that put together this report. I understand, apart from accessing this report on the website, hard copies can be arranged. Yeah, hard copies are already here, and you can access them on your way out. As I said earlier, and as you may have noted during the discussions, there could have been gaps here and there, and much as we take these reports for purposes of internalizing and criticizing, let us also look at those areas where we need to gap fill. As I close, I've got some few other remarks to make in terms of observations. I didn't participate in the panel discussion. I didn't participate in the general plenary discussions because I knew I had this other chance. So allow me also share with you these very important points to note. You may have noted when I asked in the beginning, and another person came in and asked by show of hands, let us know how many people were able to attend nursery or pre-primary or ECD, and not so many people put up their hands. And on the outside, by the look of it, it may look as if this is a very big advantage. But on the other hand, as a person who has participated in public policy, both at student level and also in government, and also in other capacities, I know this can also be a disadvantage. At times when you are making a policy maybe for night dancers, it is better to have night dancers on the formulation board. There are so many things that are happening, not only in Uganda, but the world over, because we look at them in a different way, and we look at them from a personal lens. Some people could be saying, but I'm an engineer. My friend here, the commissioner, is a doctor. This one is an accomplished scholar, and none of them attended pre-primary education. So it's not a prerequisite that for someone to succeed, this person needs to attend pre-primary education. And when we have such minds on the table where we are making policy, we may find ourselves looking at it from that perspective, forgetting that there are other perspectives from which we can look at it. So, ladies and gentlemen, much as most of us who are already at the table where policy formulation arises from, we need also to look at other perspectives. I needed just to bring this out because much as you're a professor, you're a doctor, you are a director, you are so and so, maybe you could ask yourself, why is it that Uganda has not sent someone to the moon? Yeah, maybe much as you have achieved what you wanted, we haven't sent someone to the moon because we don't have that strong foundation right away from down there. Lastly, our colleagues from the Ministry of Education, thank you. And you were updated that as late as late last month, we had a very big meeting sitting, and our policy was updated and in the rightful direction, and we have got all assurances from our beloved commissioner that the team at the ministry is not only dedicated but very, very passionate about this issue of early childhood. But we also heard from the minister's speech that one of the things that government is looking at is consolidating UPE, and then we think about moving to early childhood care and education. Allow me also make a personal note here. As an urban planner, at some point I studied urban planning, and one of the things is that you don't address urban planning from the locality where you have maybe jurisdiction. At times you may have to move out, and for that reason you hear things like metropolitan Kampala, because it is known that KCCA alone cannot address its problems when such problems are either emanating or also existing with their neighbors. So this is the same thing with ECD. We cannot look at UPE exclusively without having a very big look, or more so taking it alongside ECD. That's why it is pre-primary. Good doctors said that things like pre-diabetes is diabetes. When you look at pre-diabetes as diabetes, then you are able to avoid diabetes. So we must look at pre-primary also as part of the primary system. So in other words, if we wait to consolidate UPE and then move to what it may be a little bit too late. And also, we look at the issue of we can never consolidate because things are always doing what? Always changing. So it is very good when we heard from our commissioner here that position seems to have, we seem to be moving away from that position. So with those very many words, and with all the love and the care from all stakeholders of pre-primary education within the country and outside of the country, allow me on behalf of the ISER team and with your permission, Joe, on behalf of Human Rights Watch, I don't know whether I have that permission. I have the permission also. On behalf of Human Rights Watch, allow me close this very important event and wish you safe travels back, and also understand there's lunch and wish you a very good lunch and further discussion away from this room as we look forward to making our environment for pre-primary education better. I thank you very much and God bless you.
This is not part of the program. So the lunch will be at La Terrace. There's a restaurant called La Terrace on the ground floor. It's right next to Paradise. So as you get out, you'll receive a coupon from Nikta. She's right by the doorway. So as you get out, just get your coupon and hope you have a good lunch. Bon appetit. Anything else, you'll receive a message. That is it.